Secondhand fashion is exploding in popularity for reasons like the worsening climate crisis making all of us more aware about our consumption, and of course the economic incentive of buying discounted goods. But if we also look at how the stigma surrounding secondhand fashion has declined and instead turned into a glamorized activity that is particularly popular amongst the younger generation, it's clear that pre-loved is no longer a niche market just enjoyed by the frugal or the environmentally conscious, and is now just a generalized approach to shopping. If we look at cultural trends, they show that more secondhand fashion references are popping up in the zeitgeist. That data shows more of us are shopping secondhand from all age groups and backgrounds. And that more brands are jumping on the bandwagon because of this consumer demand, which is a massive positive considering some estimates say we've already made enough clothes for the next 6 generations. And the planet could really do with less of us buying things new. But it's not all smooth sailing. As more of us turn to secondhand, we become aware of the glaring issues in a system propped up by a broken fashion industry. Like the fact that we still can't get away from piles of fast fashion, even in the charity store. Or how the cost of secondhand goods shooting up has many people feeling like they've been priced out of the stores. But what if there was a way we could essentially make thrifting free? And not only that, but what if we built a system that rewards you for donating quality, which in turn would result in more of us walking away with quality items too? And would that impact the way the entire fashion industry operates? The fashion industry is broken in so many ways. And this series I do on my channel is my attempt to find the solutions that could save it. In today's video, we're talking not only about how the declining quality of the clothes filling up charity stores has resulted in a reputation issue for secondhand fashion, but also exploring a solution that could completely change our approach to shopping. Let's get into it. Before we do, hi, I'm Katie. I talk about sustainable fashion and how it intersects with online trends and consumer buying culture. If that sounds good to you, then make sure you're subscribed to the channel, you're following me on my social medias, and with that, let's get into it. Firstly, we need to talk about that problem I mentioned with secondhand fashion. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be buying secondhand fashion. I'm a massive advocate for it. A lot of my clothing is secondhand. But relying on charity stores and online marketplaces is not the ideal situation, for a couple of reasons. Mainly that charity stores and thrift stores reflect back to us the declining state of the fashion industry. And that reality is dominated by polyester and relentless trend cycles. I'm definitely not the only one feeling this, and there's a growing frustration online, with more people complaining about the same issues they experience every time they go thrifting. Namely, the declining quality of the clothing they see, rather than the one-off finds and unique pieces that thrifting used to be known for. The other big issue is the impact of inflation on the prices of the clothes available in the thrift. And many have been citing the rising prices as an argument to say that charity stores are no longer as affordable. With this also comes the frustration from people who have donated to charity stores hoping to help people in need, and instead see their items later listed for massively inflated prices. Obviously, before we talk about how to fix these issues, we first have to understand why they're happening. So let's do some quick context. The first question is why quality is declining. And simply put, it's fast fashion. The model popularized by brands like Zara and H&M and perfected by brands like Shein and Temu prioritizes low cost and rapid production over durability. Enter social media glamorizing overconsumption and the widely held belief that as long as you donate something after you've used it, then it doesn't matter how much you consume. And we're left with charity stores choked full of fashion that wasn't even great quality the first time, and tons of clothes that don't even see the shop floor before they get shipped off to the global south. The realities of going to the charity store today is a far cry from that romanticized vision many of us have of getting a nice coffee, looking through the racks, and being rewarded for our efforts with an armful of one-off, vintage, unique pieces that are clearly better than what we could find scrolling through Zara on Instagram at home. And of course, this perspective is from living in the UK, where our charity stores are not as big as places like the US, but I've definitely seen online this sentiment being echoed back worldwide. The other issue we need to contextualize is why the price of secondhand goods are going up. The answer that everything is going up in price seems pretty simple, but the pre-loved market isn't immune to the wider economic situation. Charity stores may be capitalizing on the increased demand by putting their prices up because they know they can get away with it, but they also have to deal with rising labor costs, rising rent prices, and also the growing calls for curation as people get turned off by the amount of fast fashion they have to slog through and maybe want some more curated racks. There doesn't seem to be much effort from big companies to fix these issues. Although some online places have introduced things like AI curation tools or reduced seller fees, many of the issues they face are tied back to the fashion industry and the actions of brands, whose production model not only directly impacts the quality of goods secondhand fashion can sell, but who also have made the cost of first-hand clothing just as low, if not lower, than what secondhand fashion can afford. This again brings me back to the solution I want to talk about in this video. Because what if we found a way of keeping clothes in circulation that is so cheap for consumers that fast fashion can't underprice it? Not only that, but it also offers consumers such a good incentive for donating quality that it completely devalues the appeal of fast fashion's disposable clothing. The solution I'm talking about is a swap shop. And I went along to one hosted in London by a company called Vert to not only find out how events like this work, but also to speak to the founder, Jess, about how she thinks this is a promising solution to so many of the frustrations we currently have with thrifting. If you're not familiar with the concept of a swap shop, it's a pretty simple experience. You bring along some clothes from your wardrobe that you never reach for, that don't fit you or no longer suit your style, and you'll receive tokens in exchange that dictate what clothing you can take away with you. You can then go browse the racks and pick up some new clothes, essentially free of charge. There's slightly more to it, like a rating system that is the core of how this business model encourages quality in fashion. But that's the basic premise. A circular business model that encourages clothes to stay in use as long as possible. And it's already doing just that. Vert has seen attendance to their events skyrocket as more people see the value in this kind of shopping, or should I say swapping. How many clothes do you reckon get swapped per event? Like ballpark?
God, you really are putting me on the spot.
Sorry.
I would say we're looking into like the thousands versus tens.
Although the core principle of these events is pretty simple, there's a lot that goes into running them, including a ton of prep and setup to make sure the event runs smoothly.
So we bring like rails and all base stock, and we bring base stock really to make sure that it's inclusive of genders and sizing, and people can bring up to 5 items of clothing, and you get tokens basically depending on the quality of the items you bring in. So we have like a sliding scale from 1 to 5, and then we have like a gold section which is for sort of designer pieces, and so depending on what brand, what item is itself, and the kind of condition of it, you get a different number of tokens, and they get loaded into an online account for you, and then you basically just go shopping with your tokens as your money.
The rating system is what really drew me into the concept. The idea that donating higher quality goods means that you can swap them for items of the same value seems like a pretty fair trade-off, but it can also be a tricky, subjective thing to enforce, and that's something we're going to dig into later in the video. There's also a bit of initial confusion from people who are so used to buying something, suddenly confronted with a system that appears to let them shop for free.
I remember I went to a swap, and I remember just feeling like I'd gone shopping for free because I was walking in with stuff I was never going to wear, and I was walking out with new to me pieces. It's certainly an area which people are still really kind of curious about. Like, mostly I'm spending the days explaining what it is. People are very generally really positive about it, but they need to like come and swap to really understand how it works and get that like buzz from it, I think.
Right at the start of the video, we asked if this was something that could completely change the way we shop. So let's talk about the way it does improve our current fashion industry and buying culture before we discuss potential hiccups. Maybe we should first talk about one of the biggest issues most people are annoyed with thrifting right now, the overload of fast fashion, and whether swap shops solve this issue or not. I think the answer is yes and no, because maybe this solution wouldn't make much difference immediately. But if this kind of event takes off in popularity, then a system built on trading quality for quality could encourage people to think about the quality of what they're buying new and its resale value down the line. But it also relies on more people joining in and seeing the value in this like-for-like system.
Yes, it's a solution, but actually we need more people to be doing it for it to sort of keep sustaining itself. So yeah, I hope that it will become more mainstream in the future.
I think one of the easiest benefits we can see is how it could turn your wardrobe into a one in, one out system, which would stop many of us from hoarding our clothing and letting it sit in the back of the wardrobe unworn for years until the point where we do an annual declutter and throw away or donate everything at once. For people who are emotionally connected to their wardrobe and really hang on to things, it could mean that you go along to the swap shop and you only trade in one item that maybe just doesn't fit you anymore. But for others who like to have newness in their wardrobe, it could mean that you're bringing along along 5 items each time and getting 5 new things for basically free. I know you said that you allow people to bring up to 5 items with them to get like their tokens for, but how many on average do you think people bring?
It's definitely 5.
Is it?
Yeah. I would say nearly everyone, 90% bring 5 items.
You could obviously do this one in, one out wardrobe system by donating and buying from a charity store. But as I've kind of hinted throughout the video, swap shops offer a cheaper solution. You're essentially getting a free exchange of clothing for things you no longer want to wear to new to you items that have the exact same value. Something even fast fashion can't underprice. If we look at how this will impact our relationship with our clothing, buying things with the intention to swap them later on might help us hang on to the perceived value of our clothing and encourage us to look after them more carefully. And of course, it kind of does what charity shops don't in almost paying us for our donations. And that will hopefully dissuade people from just sending their clothing straight to landfill if they think they can get something in return. Jess was also telling me how much swap shops allow people to experiment with their personal style.
It can be like a revolving wardrobe for you. One of the nice things about swapping is that you can be a bit more experimental with your style because you're not buying anything. Like for this event, it's free. You know, you might pick up a top and think, oh, I'm not sure about this. Maybe it's not me, or maybe I won't wear it, but actually just try. Like take it home, see if you can style it, see if you want to wear it, see how it feels, and then if you don't like it, then bring it back and swap it back in.
The concept and all of these benefits almost seemed too good to be true when Jess was explaining it when I was doing my own research. But there was also a healthy dose of skepticism in my mind. One potential issue I could see is whether it was inclusive or not, because this is entirely dependent on the people that show up to your event, presumably. But as the average size of customer rises in places like the UK and around the world, it makes sense that the average size of the clothing would rise with it. Jess also mentioned that she aims to make the clothing she brings along to events size and gender inclusive too, which could help balance out any potential deficits. I have also seen plus size specific swaps going on from other companies online, which I think is really encouraging and I hope becomes more widespread. There's also the idea of price inclusivity, and many swap shops are actually ticketed events where you have to pay a base price to enter. So this might impact the argument of whether swap shops are cheaper than charity stores. But in Vert's case, they try to do paid and free events to make it accessible for everyone. Speaking of inclusive and accessible, brings me on to one of my biggest potential questions with this method of shopping, which is the rating system fair? This was one of the trickier questions I had to ask Jess, but I'm glad I did because she explained her own reservations with the rating system and her struggles accepting something that's actually quite integral to the viability of her business.
Actually, the first sort of few events I ran, I didn't have a token system in place. And I really introduced it because I didn't think that the one-for-one thing was fair. And I know some swaps do that, but I wanted to try and make it inclusive, but also incentivize people to bring better items along. It's really tricky, to be honest. Some brands which you might associate with being lower quality are actually no worse than the brands that just have a good rep. For me, it's really like durability. There are some brands that you know are going to last and some that just aren't. It's a complete minefield, to be totally honest. There's no right or wrong answer, but I have to take into account what I think the condition of that item is and will be in the future.
The reservation I have already mentioned is whether this fixes our desire for newness. And on the surface, it seems like it doesn't. Our desire for newness in our wardrobes is what underlies a lot of our overconsumptive habits. And it's something Jess has also thought about the ethics of.
This isn't about trying to constantly make you want to have new things or, yes, refresh your wardrobe, but I don't also want to be another sort of factor driving people to want to change things all the time and get new stuff. So it's a bit of a kind of internal battle all the time, actually.
I think in my mind, even though the business model is built off us renewing our wardrobe, I think it also rewards us for investing in quality. And because we're investing in quality, maybe we're more likely to want to keep that clothing around because it doesn't wear and tear as easily, or because we have bought it for so much that we want to hang on for it for longer. And although it sounds counterintuitive to the business model, it might see us cycling through our clothes less. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. The last kind of question I had as someone who's very interested in fashion business is how this model is financially viable. The economics of a swap shop don't seem profitable. And that's a potential issue that would need to be solved if it was to grow at scale. And this is something Jess broke down in the interview that I did with her that's now available in full on my podcast Refashioned. So make sure you go listen after this. The final thing I want to discuss is the impact this could have on the fashion industry if more of us started swapping than donating our items once we're done with them. I've spoken at length about how this business model really puts a value on the quality of the clothing we're consuming. And if customers start to really care about the quality of clothing they're buying firsthand, then brands might sit up and take notice. And maybe they'll change their business model to factor in this demand for quality, which might in turn make them abandon the cheap, disposable business models. I think this solution isn't one that really focuses on fixing the fashion industry. However, it's focused on trying to give consumers a better outlet for trying to be sustainable without having to put up with the frustrations of searching through the racks of a charity store and just seeing bad quality reflected back to you. Am I saying swapping is the perfect solution and all of us should stop donating to charity stores and just start going to these events instead? Well, swapping is a good idea, and I think everyone should try it because not only is it fun and community-based, but you do come away with the idea that you haven't lost anything by donating your clothes. You've in fact gained something new for pretty much free. But it isn't perfect. It can offer benefits that thrifting can't, like rewarding quality, giving people an incentive to donate their clothes rather than throw them away, and allowing style experimentation. But there's also a potential inaccessibility issue in the quality for quality rating system, and it doesn't fix that impulse for newness that leads to so much overconsumption. But charity stores also aren't immune to these issues either. I think what swap shops do is provide another avenue for people to join in the sustainability movement, and that in the future, swap shops and charity stores will work together rather than against each other.
Always go charity shopping because they need the support financially. But multiple times I've tried to take stuff to a charity shop and they've said, like, we're not accepting donations, we've got too much stuff. I think there's space for us all to exist. I mean, if you think about how many brands exist on the high street, there's got to be place for swapping and pre-loved shopping to coexist.
The belief that sustainability initiatives need to be perfect and that our behaviour as consumers needs to be perfectly sustainable is holding us back from any progress. Nothing can be the exact right solution when it's based off a system that is in fact broken itself. So even if swapping doesn't provide the perfect answer, it does take us closer to a circular fashion system. And I encourage all of you to go try it. I want to say a massive thanks to Jess and the team at the pop-up for having me and chatting to me. And the full interview with Jess is now available on my podcast Refashioned. You should definitely go check it out because we go into things a lot deeper. And if you live in the UK and you want to go along to one of Vert's new events, I'm going to be popping their website, their socials, and their upcoming events on screen for you to see. I'll also put them in the description below. But if you don't live in the UK, you can really easily Google swap shop near me and you'll probably find a local event. Even if you don't though, you could host one yourself. And finally, just to say that this video is part of a new series I'm doing here on my channel, examining the issues currently facing the fashion industry and the solutions that try to fix it. And I currently have a number of really exciting projects in the work for this series. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss it. And I'd be really grateful if you enjoyed this video to share it with others so that we can expand our reach and our influence and I can get more exciting projects to bring you. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for watching and I'll speak to you really soon. Have a nice day. Bye.